Señoras y señores, sin bater en la trompeta. Cantón, eso me sale del alma, son directo al corazón.
Wow. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Straight Up Talk with Earl Rush. You were listening, well, live. He was playing live. You were actually live, but you were listening to Pete Nader playing, one of the greatest trumpet players in the game that's ever been playing Latin and jazz music. I can go on and on. Let me give you a few of his credits. He's played the Spanish Harlem Orchestra, the Mambo Legends Orchestra, the Latin Giants of Jazz, Frankie Ruiz Orchestra. He's been musical director of the Larry Harlow Orchestra. I could go on and on, but it'll probably take all night. But that's the reason we have Mr. Nader coming tonight. We're going to go over his fantastic career, and as always, my lovely co-host, the fabulous Eileen Torres is here. So enough about me. We're going to get straight to the action. Peter.
There we are.
All right, Eileen, how you doing?
Doing great. Glad to have Pete with us. Pete is a gentleman who's in high demand because of his skills. He's also very reliable. People know exactly what he's going to give and what they're going to get. Well, you never quite know what you're going to get because I've seen Pete kind of take us into orbit with his playing. So, Pete, it's great to have you here. And the audience always wants to know about your life. So tell us, when and where you were born and were you raised in the same place?
Well, first of all, Earl and Eileen, thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor to be here. It's a privilege. Nice to see you guys. Your question again, where did I start playing?
No, where were you born and raised?
Oh, okay. I was born in the Bronx, New York. My parents were Puerto Rican. My mother was born in New York. My father was born in Puerto Rico. Born in the Bronx.
So you stayed there the whole time, basically?
Actually, no. We lived in the East Bronx. I went to kindergarten, and then we moved to Puerto Rico for 2 years. First year we lived in Las Lomas, Rio Piedras. Second year we lived in Levittown, Cataño, which it was a brand new urbanización back then. It was brand new. We were in the first section. The house was brand new. It's now that it's not new anymore, but back then it was. So I lived there for 2 years. Then my parents got divorced, and my mom, my brother, and myself, we came back to New York, and I've been back in New York since. So that'll you may have questions later about my father, but I just want to lay out that beginning. I didn't even start playing music till after we came back to New York, and my parents were already divorced, so my father didn't have a musical influence in my musical history.
What did your parents listen to? So when you were growing up, what kind of music did you hear in your household? Okay,
so believe it or not, as I mentioned, my mom was born in New York. She was very Americanized. She speaks
DC Fire Department.
It reminds me of early pandemic days. So it's sad. My mom is very Americanized. She speaks perfect English. She used to like, American music, the Beatles. I remember liking the Beatles as a kid myself and stuff that was on the radio. I didn't actually start listening to salsa until I was about 12 years old. My older brother started listening to salsa. So yeah, I'll tell you more about that when you give me some more questions. But I
Well,
grew up listening more to American music.
was your brother a musician, or did he dance to the music, or?
My brother, yeah, he started learning how to dance salsa. He's like 3.5 years older than me. His name is Angel. He was a musician. As a matter of fact, the first bands, my brother started taking private drum lessons with, Lynn Oliver was the name of his drum teacher. Lynn Oliver also had a rehearsal studio in Manhattan, and bands would rehearse there. But anyway, make a long story short, my brother started playing trap drums, and then he started learning how to play timbales, and he started listening to salsa. And I'm talking about, this is Ray Barretto in the days of Acid and the Fania All Stars. The movie. I went to see that when I was first getting into salsa, and I fell in love right away. So Ray Barretto's band was one of my favorites. Roberto Rodriguez on trumpet was like that. He was the ultimate for me at that time when I was learning how to play trumpet. So I would kind of play along with the records, and then my brother started playing a little bit of keyboard. So he would play Montuno's, some chord progressions repeatedly, and I would start improvising. So that was helpful in the development of my ability to improvise.
So what led you to the trumpet? Why did you select that particular instrument?
Okay, so my best friend at the time, he's deceased now, unfortunately. His name was Joey Rivera. We lived on Ward Avenue in the Bronx. Unbeknownst to me, he was taking private trumpet lessons. I just didn't know. One day I was walking by his house and I heard a trumpet, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's coming from Joey's house. So I went up to his window and I looked in, and he's practicing the trumpet. I said, yeah, I didn't know you played the trumpet. He says, yeah, I'm taking lessons. And I said, well, can I come in and watch? And he said, yeah, come in. So I watched what he was practicing, looking at the books. I didn't know how to read music or anything. I had never taken any music lessons, but I really liked what he was doing. So I went home and I asked my mom, can I take trumpet lessons? And luckily, thank God, she said, okay. So Joey and I used to go to private trumpet lessons on Fordham Road in the Bronx. And then there was another third guy that joined us later on, Louis Lopez. But yeah, I started taking private trumpet lessons at age 11. I had never played an instrument before that. My brother and I used to like to sing harmony, Beatles tunes, stuff like that. But trumpet, I started playing at age 11.
Did you find it? Did you find it very difficult, or were you able to really start getting the hang of it quickly?
It is a difficult instrument to play because what we do with the lips is so unnatural that in order to sound good, you need to practice often. Otherwise, it feels like horrible. You lay off for a few days, it doesn't sound good. So, and to play the high notes, it's difficult. Some guys, for some reason, it's easy for them. I'm not one of those guys. But so I started taking private lessons. We get the beginner's book. You learn how to read whole note, half note, quarter notes, and then you start doing different songs in the book. My problem was I like to play by ear. I didn't even want to look at the books. I would hear a record. My brother was playing it, and I try to play along what I'm hearing. So when I went back to the teacher, every week we used to go, I didn't do that well in my lessons because I had diverted, sidetracked, and started playing along with the records. But that kind of worked out good because when it came time for me to be in a band and play solos, I was pretty good at that. I just wasn't the best sight reader of music, especially at that time.
Well, there's something to be said for learning how to read. Learning how to play music by ear. I know a lot of local guys who have done very well and have, later gone on to read music. But there's something about that that I think really develops your style and taste, because you've heard so many people do it, and I think that it just helps you become better. But what do I know? I'm not a musician. I'm just a
Well,
music
actually,
lover.
I'm sorry, Eileen. It's actually a gift. Having a good ear is not something that everybody is born with. Um, to be able to hear something and then sing back that note in tune. Some people are tone deaf. No matter what, you can read music great and learn everything about phrasing and articulation. But if you can't hear, you're never really going to be able to improvise well. At least I don't see how if you don't have a good ear. So a good ear is a gift. I thank God that I was born with a good ear, but it also takes developing. You can't just have a good ear and magically play stuff. Sometimes you see that in movies, but I find that kind of hard to believe that, a kid hears a song and then can play it back, because it ain't that easy. But anyway, I thank God I have a pretty good ear, and I worked on it. And then I also went to other music schools, which I could tell you more about if we go there in
Well,
our
I was
conversation.
just going to bring that up because, I'm reading this book, New York, The International Sound of Latin Music, 1940 to 1990. And so many of you are in here, and your name is here when they're talking about the Johnny Colon School. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so to the best of my recollection, I was probably, let me tell you a little bit more before we get there. So
Okay.
I started playing in elementary school, fifth grade, almost sixth grade. And then I went to junior high school in the Bronx. I was in the jazz band, the concert band, uh, and the orchestra. And we had a pretty decent band. We actually went to England in a musical exchange in my senior year in junior high school. And I also got a scholarship for private lessons in my senior year in junior high school. So that's it for junior high school. So then I went to Music and Art High School, which you may or may not know is one of the top two music schools, public music schools in the city of New York. There was Performing Arts and Music and Art High School. They eventually merged into the LaGuardia High School now, but back then Music and Art High School was one of the top schools. So Johnny Colon, in around my freshman year at Music and Art High School, I believe it was a friend of mine, Gus Ona, who was also a trumpet player, that may have first brought me to the Johnny Colon School. And that was around 14 years old back then, almost 15, somewhere around there. Yeah, I did go to Johnny Colon School. Back then, I'm trying to remember who. I remember Jimmy Delgado also used to go there, and I'm not sure who else, but there were some guys who later on continued to play in some of the top bands.
How old were you when you realized, wow, I've got something here. I've got talent and I got it. How old were you?
So I mentioned that my older brother was also a musician, and when I was still in. Are you guys still there?
Okay, yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Sammy Cotto, what's up, my brother? I'm seeing names flash across the bottom
Yeah,
of
you've got
the
a lot
screen.
of fans,
screen.
Lupe Torres and Bella Martinez and gosh,
Alejandro, what's up, my brother? So my older brother, he was already in high school, and they had a couple of bands, and my brother would always take me to be in the band. So I was always the youngest guy in the band, but because I was taking lessons and I used to practice a lot, I was pretty good compared to some of his friends, band members who were just starting to maybe learn how to play an instrument. So to answer your question, I realized I was pretty good back then because I was one of the better guys in the band. As a matter of fact, I used to blackmail my brother because I was an integral part of the band. So if he gave me a hard time, I would say, I'm going to quit the band. And he's like, okay. What do you want? Yeah, I would always threaten him with I would quit the band and I would get my way.
Well, very good. Very good negotiating skills.
Danny Mendez, what's up? I'm sorry, Eileen. Every once in a while, I'm going to say hello to people, but
Please do.
No, we want you to.
Yes, please acknowledge them because they're taking the time to honor you because, you know, they admire what you do. They like you.
I like all my people too. I'm very grateful for them that they support me over the years.
Okay. Nice.
So tell us about either, and they may be the same, you know, your first professional gig and or your first breaking in with the big boys.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, when my brother was in high school, I was in junior high school, they had a band called Latin Soul Incorporated. And we used to play Latin and soul. And then my brother and a couple of other guys and a guy named Randy Ortiz, they decided to form a Latin rock band, which, you know, those were the days of Carlos Santana was a big deal. So we kind of wanted to do a Latin rock group. And we did. And we used to rehearse a lot. And we would do some local gigs. And somehow Fania Records found out about us. And they came to hear us play. We actually got a record deal with Fania Records. So this was approximately 1973. And I was like 14, 15 at the time. So we got a record deal with Fania. This group is called Seguida, Latin rock band. And we also won Latin New York Magazine Latin Rock Band of the Year.
Wow.
In one of those years. So in one of the recording sessions, the first recording session, the producer for Fania was Johnny Pacheco. And so our group, you know, we were very unorthodox. We didn't know the real fundamentals of Latin music. We just, you know, one guy started playing congas, the other bongos, timbales. We didn't really know what clave was and how, you know, there's certain rules to clave. So we just kind of crazily playing what we thought was good Latin rock. And Pacheco got a little impatient. Oh, you guys are doing the double time and the clave is not right. And he got kind of impatient. So the next recording session with Fania, the producer was Larry Harlow. And Larry was more patient and he kind of explained things more to us. So, well, you know, Pacheco had told us some stuff, so we went home and we kind of corrected what he explained to us was wrong. So the next session we came into, you know, it went smoother. So that's when I met Larry Harlow for the first time. Let me go back real quick and mention to you that Johnny Pacheco was my godfather.
Oh.
He and my father, back in the day, I guess they were good friends. Pacheco actually baptized me in church. I don't know what happened. Something happened with the friendship or, you know, the move to Puerto Rico, but they weren't as close as they were at one time. So I hadn't even been around Pacheco until that recording session. And that's when I think it came to my attention that he was my godfather. But anyway, getting back to Larry Harlow, sessions went well with Larry Harlow. Larry Harlow evidently liked the way I played for a young kid. And a couple of months later, one of Larry Harlow's trumpet players was ill, Ralph Castrello. He had to have surgery. So Larry called me, offered me the gig one Saturday early morning. He called me and I said, "This is a joke. Who is this?" And he said, "It's Larry." I said, "No, who is this?" And finally he convinced me it was him, and I was in shock and I walked around like I was in a cloud and I think it was that very same night that he had a gig at the Corso. So I'm 15 years old. And I show up at the Corso. I don't know if you guys went to the Corso. There was a big bouncer named Henry, really muscular guy. And there was a long staircase to go upstairs. So I walk upstairs and Henry's looking at me like, "What do you want, kid?" I said, "I'm here to play with Larry Harlow." And he said, "Kid, get the F out of here." And I said, no, for real. He said, kid, I'm going to throw you down the effing stairs. Get out of here. And so I started walking downstairs, and then from the bottom, for real, ask Larry. I didn't want to be at the top of the stairs. I didn't want to be close to him. So I yelled at him from the bottom of the stairs, go ask Larry. So he went and he asked Larry, and Larry said, yeah. So it was really exciting for me. I hadn't had a chance to really I didn't have a chance to look at the music beforehand. So I was kind of sight reading, and I guess I did okay because I became a steady member of the band. So I played with Larry for 5 years straight back then, from age 15 to about age 20. Then I left to play with Casanova and Montuno. Casanova and Montuno was like a spin-off of the Johnny Pacheco band, and they were really, really hot in New York City. I mean, they were working a lot, and although things were okay with Harlow, I just felt like it was time for a change. So trust me, Larry got mad at me. I was in the penalty box for years. He wouldn't call me anymore. It took like 10 years to get out of that penalty box with Larry. But after that, he would always call me, and if I was available, I would play with him. I love Larry. Larry, if you're tuning in, I hope you're doing okay. And I'm going to call you any day now. I've been meaning to hopefully go see you. But that's a little bit about that story. Go ahead. Any more questions?
Yeah. So who was playing trumpets in the band, in Harlow's band with you?
Okay. The very first gig I did, there was a short Italian guy named Bobby Fortunato. Also in the band at that time was Cachete Maldonado on congas, Tony Wampo Jimenez playing timbales and bongos. He was like playing both. Reynaldo Jorge on trombone, Louis Kahn. Junior Gonzales was the vocalist at the time. Danny Rosado was playing bass. Danny used to, I was too young to drive, so Danny actually used to pick me up for like the first, 8 months or so. Thank you, Danny, if you're listening. After that, Eddie Guagua used to pick me up. And Pablito Rosario then came into the band. I think he had been either playing with Mongo Santa Maria or David Bowie, but Pablito El Indio Rosario was like really a mentor to me. He was, I love him like an uncle. He taught me a lot. He was my roommate when we would travel. Who else was in the band at that time? I think I mentioned everybody. Later on, Larry Spencer came into the band, a trumpet player, and a lot of times he used 3 trumpets. Sometimes it was just 2 trumpets. Then the guy that I replaced, Ralph Castrello, when he recuperated from his surgery, he came back into the band and he started playing 3rd trumpet, and he also was one of the choristas. And Larry did coro too. Back then, Larry used to play an electronic keyboard called the clavinet, which had a distinct sound like, which was, I think he was the only one back then that was playing that keyboard, but I kind of liked it, yeah.
Well, you're talking about Larry Harlow and who's in the band. When I came back from college, I'm going to say about a month later, the big news was Larry Harlow's coming to town. And that was in the time when La Cartera was hitting. And, I remember Junior Gonzales was there. I remember Louis Kahn was there. I remember Eddie Guagua Rivera. I wonder if you were there. I know you've been to Lorraine, a few times with Larry. Larry told me one time he thinks he came for every Sábado de Gloria for many years.
Well, if it was after like October of 74 and before 1980, yeah, I would have been there.
Yeah, okay. Well, I never met you there. Never met you there, but anyway, so you had
You probably thought I was some random kid that snuck on stage because I looked like I was
well,
pretty young
anyway,
back
the band sounded tremendous. You guys played in a church hall at that time, and I thought, gee, you know, I didn't know a lot about Larry Harlow's band, but I knew La Cartera and a couple other songs that were on that album, and I thought, gee, if they're paying to bring him, he must be pretty darn good. And boy, oh boy, you know, I was hooked. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about your time with Casanova. You know, what a fabulous voice, and since he's Cuban, his style was more in that Cuban sound. So, tell us about your time with him.
Well, I played with Casanova y Montuno for a little bit over 2 years. As I said, I had Eddie Cortez, what's up, my brother? I had just left Harlow's band, and at that time, Casanova y Montuno was really hot. A guy named Marty Arrett was the booking agent, and Marty Arrett at the time had all the connections of, the booking some bands around town, including the Corso. I mean, we would sometimes play like 3-4 times a week at the Corso, among other places. But I remember at one time we played 28 days straight, every single day with doubles, triples, quadruples in one day.
Wow.
And yeah, it was. I mean, back then you could make a living playing with one band. Not only, Casanova level, but other bands that maybe were slightly at a lower level. But there were so many places to play. And back then, the Latinos in New York, a lot of them were first generation, be they Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban, South American. Everybody came out to salsa gigs. Unlike now, the younger generation, which is a whole nother conversation. They may not necessarily be into salsa the way it was back then. But you could make a living playing in a band. And you can do pretty well, too. So, I mean, here I was, even in the Harlow days, I was making pretty good money for a young kid who didn't have to pay rent because I lived with my mom. So I did okay. I got myself a new car at age 16. But, my mom did help in that area. But back then, Casanova Montuno in the early 80s was super hot. We played at the Corso a lot, Casino 14, Casablanca, Cork and Bottle. I remember playing a lot in Union City, because that's a lot of Cubans there. They had a lot of Cuban nightclubs there. So we went to Miami, we went to Colombia a couple of times. A lot of work in New York City. Like I said, doubles, triples, quadruples. It was a good time to be a musician playing salsa in New York City.
Like Archie Bunker says, those were the days.
Those were the days.
Yep.
And Edith. I think Edith agreed with him.
Eddie Cortez asked some questions that I wouldn't dare ask you. I would not put you in that position, but he asked it, so I try to ask what our viewers asked. He asked, "What was your favorite band to play with?" I feel like that's putting you on the spot, but
well, you know what? Honestly, I have a special place in my heart for pretty much all the bands that I've played with. Everybody's different. It's like food, there's different flavors. You could like so many flavors. So each band has had a different flavor. Even let's go back to Harlow. As different musicians came into Harlow's band while I was there, it felt different. I mean, Frankie Malavé was one of the congueros in the time that I was there. Frankie Rodriguez was one of the congueros that played in the time I was there. A lot of different players made it feel different. When Nestor Sanchez was the vocalist with the Harlow band. Now, for those of you who don't know, Nestor Sanchez was an albino Puerto Rican singer who I know a lot of you know Cano Estremera, but con todo respeto, Cano, Nestor was the bomb. There was even one occasion in Puerto Rico where they battled, and I don't think anybody ever recorded that. Nestor did a job. And unfortunately, there were not a lot of witnesses to that very special, unique one time, as far as I remember. But anyway, you know, when Nestor Sanchez was the vocalist in the band, Ruben, but believe it or not, Ruben Blades sang for a while with Harlow too when I was there. Not that long, maybe 6 months. There was another guy, Mike Wagenti, that sang with the band. So even within one band, different musicians coming and going. Eddie Wawa, the bass player, brought Harlow's band to another level. You know, there was one night that Harlow was sick, and he sent a sub who I'd never heard of at the time, never seen before. This guy with a little like a Frenchy hat turned out to be Jorge Dalto.
Oh my God. One of my all-time favorites.
And you know, of course, I love the way Larry plays, but when I heard Jorge Dalto, I was like, "Who the hell is this guy? And damn, does he play good!" So he brought another flavor to it too. So, in regard to Eddie's question, each band has had its own special thing. You know, it applies to Spanish Harlem Orchestra. Also, there were different players throughout the time I was there. You know, in the beginning it was Chino Nunez and Bobby Allende. And then later on, you know, Luisito Quintero and George Delgado and Jorge Gonzales. So the band changes. You know, Jimmy Bosch was there and Dan Reagan. And then Doug Beavers came in and, you know, it changes. So I can't say there was one favorite band. I mean, I play with the Mambo Legends Orchestra. That's a great band. You got some of the greatest musicians there, but that also has changed with different singers. You know, Frankie Vasquez, Sita Rodriguez, Jeremy Bosch. So it's always changing. There's always something new, and thank God, you know, it's like spice. You keep changing the spices; it's going to taste different. But, you know, 9 times out of 10, it tastes really good.
Do you have a favorite orchestration? Like, do you prefer big band over orchestra, over conjunto, over grupo? You know, do you gravitate toward any of those a little more, or charanga? You know.
Well, see, I would say the same answer applies to that too. Because I played in conjuntos, it's just 2 trumpets. Casanova and Montuno is just two trumpets. So the instrumentation is simpler, but still, depending on how the arranger arranges it, and it's like a different dish. It's like you have arroz con gandules, and then you have mofongo. It's a different dish. They're both very good, but it's a different thing. So, I mean, I love big band, the Mambo Legends Orchestra. You know, se me paran los pelos, my hair stand up, thinking about it, being on stage. Spanish Harlem Orchestra, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, and a baritone sax. It's not a full big band like the Mambo Legends Orchestra, but still, it's a great combination. And it depends on the arrangers too, and the composition. So again, there's a lot of flavors that influence the taste of it, and who the cooks are, who the people contributing to the flavor in their various instruments. It's like a different dish all the time. So it's hard to say I have a favorite. Of course, you know, as a brass player, I love bands that have brass. But, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I was honored that Orquesta Broadway, Eddie Servigon, invited me. He put me on a gig with La Orquesta Broadway, and I was the only brass player. I was like a featured soloist. I made up moñas, and you know, you talk about charanga. La Orquesta Broadway is like a legendary band. So I had a blast playing with them. You know, there was a time, some of you may or may not know, that Roberto Rodriguez, the Cuban trumpet player, the one that I mentioned earlier that used to play with Barreto, towards the end of his career, he became a member of Orquesta Broadway. So for a year or two, it was Broadway with Roberto Rodriguez on trumpet. And I love the way Roberto Rodriguez played. I mean, there are a lot of other trumpet players that I love as well, but Roberto was one of the guys that first, like, in Latin, I was like, damn, listen to that guy. Can I do that? So I would try to imitate him. But after Roberto Rodriguez died, once in a while, I would be somewhere and Broadway was playing. And at first, I would ask Eddie, hey, can I jam with you? Can I play a solo? And he said, okay. And I guess he liked the way I played, because after that, whenever he would see me, he would call me on stage, Pete, come on. And so for the first time, he recently called me for a gig where I actually got paid.
Wow.
He paid me very well. Thank you, Eddie. Te dije que te iba a dar un beso en la boca, pero se me pasó. La próxima vez te voy a dar un beso en la boca porque ese guiso me pagó. Muy bien, gracias.
Well, and that's interesting because, I'm not sure if the audience knows, original charanga was only flutes and violin. And so
Right.
it's evolved. And to be brought into that evolution means that you have something significant to contribute.
Well,
Let's.
good. Sorry.
I was going to say let's put on another video so we can talk a little bit about your varied experiences.
Okay.
Let's see what we have next. Well, I wasn't prepared to get to this soon, but we might as well, because Earl, this band has come up in previous interviews with other musicians talking about some of the greatest bands in New York. And this is one that a lot of people are not familiar with. They only made, what, 5 albums? Is that correct? Three? I thought it was 5. Oh, my God. Okay.
3.
This band was swinging, rocking, and anyway, tell us about Grupo Fascinacion and your role in establishing it.
1983, New York City. There was a group of young but really good musicians that had been rehearsing for approximately 1 year. Most of the musicians in Grupo Fascinacion were playing with Conjunto Clasico. And a couple like myself, I was playing with Casanova y Montuno. And I'm not sure, I think the bongo player also, the original bongo player. All right, so let me tell you about the original guys in the band. Let me first mention that I mentioned the band had been rehearsing kind of secretly for about a year, and they actually recorded secretly with Rico Records. Ralph Cartagena was the owner of Rico Records. He also had a Gran Combo on Combo Records, but he had a smaller label called Rico Records. And so I was actually the very last member to enter Grupo Fascinacion. They had been rehearsing, they recorded, but one of the trumpet players, Rene Lopez, who was one of Ray Barretto's trumpet players, and then later on, I believe he was with Típica 73.
Yes.
With Típica 73, he was supposed to be part of Fascinacion, but he decided he was going to retire to actually drive a truck, delivery truck. I guess he was just tired of playing. But he was also a great trumpet player too. I was a fan of his. He was an excellent soloist. And he was one of the trumpet players that played alongside Roberto Rodriguez and the Ray Barretto band. But again, he decided to retire. So at the last minute, they asked me to be a part of the band. So I didn't rehearse for the year prior to that. But I think they were at the stage of the recording where it was time for the brass to record. So I got to record the whole album back then. That was the first Fascinacion recording called Fascinating Sounds. So let me tell you about some of the original guys in the band. Sadly, quite a few of them are deceased. The original conguero, Papo Rosendo Papo Burgos, he died a couple of years after that of leukemia. He was in his 20s when he died. That was really sad. The tresista, Ivan Palomita Conde, who prior to that was playing with Conjunto Clasico, he died too, probably, 15 years ago. He had a heart attack, is my understanding. Who else? Well, I think the rest of the guys are still alive from the original band. So the original bongo player now plays with a Gran Combo. That's Richie Bastar, El Hijo de Caco Bastar, the famous timbalero. Richie's played bongos with us. Actually, for a while, he played congas with Fascinacion before moving to Puerto Rico and playing with a bunch of bands, including a Gran Combo. Now he's currently a member of a Gran Combo. The original bass player was Abiud Humpy Troche, and he's living in Florida now. He's been up there for a while, but he was playing with Conjunto Clasico before that as well. El pianista, Robert Navarro, was also playing with Clasico before Fascinacion, and Robert's moved to Florida too. He's in Port St. Lucie. I think the bass player Humpy is in Ocala or somewhere around there. The saxophone player Vincent Velez was, he was playing with a merengue band, Primitivo Santos, back then. He's the original baritone sax player. Danny Jimenez, trumpet player, the lead trumpet player, was playing with Clasico. He now lives in Colombia. The other trumpet player was Edwin Gonzales. He was also playing with Clasico. He now lives in Puerto Rico. The original vocalist was Johnny Rivera, who many of you may know went on to have a successful solo career too. I don't remember who he was singing with back then, but
he went on to Clasico later, right?
He went on to Clasico afterwards, yeah. Many people don't know that Johnny is Adalberto Santiago's nephew.
Oh.
So he has that musical influence. But Johnny's now living in Puerto Rico. Who else? So back then, that's it. It was like a conjunto, but with the baritone sax. There were no timbales. I believe I mentioned everybody in the band. Later on, I'll mention some of the people who some of the original guys left. Some of them died. May they rest in peace. But some of the other guys that played in Grupo Fascinacion, or Bobby Allende played congas for a while with the band. Sammy Timbalón played bongos. May he rest in peace. See, when I mentioned earlier about different musicians give the band a different feel, Sammy on bongos took it to a different, feel altogether. He was not that Richie wasn't great, but just Sammy had a different feel. Eddie Montalvo played with the band for a while. Sal Cuevas played bass with the band for a while.
Hmm.
Johnny Torres from Puerto Rico played with the band for a while. Some other trumpet players that played in the band afterwards. Mike Santiago, excellent trumpet player, now lives in Florida. Jimmy Sabatel Jr. now lives in Florida. He played with the band. Pito Rodriguez, who lives in Puerto Rico, played with the band for a while. There was another singer that came in towards the, I believe it was just for the third recording, or maybe the second and third. Tito Gonzales. He, I think he's living like in Rochester or somewhere upstate New York. I mentioned Vincent, the sax player, now lives upstate New York. So I might be anticipating. Sorry, I got it. Itch in my throat. Let me drink some of my coconut water. Excuse me, guys. Thank you, Lupe. She says I blend into any flavor of music. Thank you. So I might be anticipating one of your questions, Eileen. A lot of times people ask me, why doesn't Fascinacion do a reunion? I would love that. But as I mentioned, a few of the guys are no longer with us. Everybody lives in different places. I mean, in order for a reunion, there would have to be a lot of money to bring Johnny from Puerto Rico, Richie from Puerto Rico, Robert from Florida, Humpy from Florida,
Colombia.
Colombia, Danny's in Colombia, Edwin, the trumpet players in Puerto Rico. And we could bring some of the guys that played later, but I think the real draw would be to have original guys, as many as possible. Vincent lives upstairs, and you got to bring those guys. You got to put them up in a hotel. It's a lot of money involved, and I don't know of any promoter who would go there.
Well, especially that, a lot of people really don't know who Fascinacion was. It was such a short-lived band, but you guys, when you were on the scene, you were killing it.
It was short-lived, and it wasn't that we weren't that well known outside of New York. We went to different places around the U.S., but I don't remember that we ever played outside of the U.S. at all. And it was unfortunate. I mentioned Rafi Cartagena also had a Gran Combo, so we weren't his priority. And, we always felt that he could have done more as far as exposure for us, maybe put us on a tour with a Gran Combo so more people would see us outside of New York. And New York, people loved us. But little by little, as guys went on to play with other bands, I actually wound up kind of inheriting the band because the guys, one would leave, another would leave, and I, even though I was the last one to come in, I was like the last one there. Me and Vincent Velas, and then Ivan was still there, and then Robert moved to Florida, and Ivan moved to Florida. So, and I started working, and it was a lot of responsibility to maintain the band and have a full-time job. So I just, little by little, I just kind of let it slip away. We started to do a fourth recording, but we weren't with a label. I was actually paying for it and asking some of the guys to. But to make a long story short, it wasn't coming out at quite the same quality as the previous one. So I decided to nip it in the bud, and we just didn't finish that production.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you retain the charts?
That's a good question. I had them, and sorry, still got that itch. At one point, I left it in Robert Navarro's garage when he was living in Brooklyn, and then he moved to Florida, and he took the music with him. And I've been asking him for it since, and he hasn't given it back to me. So Robert has the charts.
Robert, give them back.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the other thing that people still tell me to this day is that the musical arrangements of Fascinacion, we were ahead of our time. I'm not saying that porque tengo guille, but that's the truth of the matter. I mean, a lot of our music was arranged by the late, great Jose Febles, who was, an amazing arranger. Within the band, too, we had excellent arrangers, too. We had Roberto Navarro was an excellent arranger. Vincent Velez was an excellent arranger. People like Jose Madera did some of the arranging. So we had some kick-ass, ahead of our time arrangements back then. And even to this day, they still sound pretty modern. And we're talking about, was that almost 30 years ago. So, yeah.
Alrighty. Let's hear another video real quick.
Okay.
And let's see if this is the one that I thought was coming up.
Okay. Was that one of the songs, Eileen?
Was that what?
Was that one of the songs?
Yes, that was one of them. And I wanted Pete to tell us about this new formulation. I only recognize the guys in the front, none of the guys in the back.
Okay, first of all, let me say that for some reason, what I was hearing sounded a little bit faster than it should have been playing. I don't know if it has to do with the Wi-Fi, internet lag or something, but that tune is actually a little slower. So what you saw was Pete Nader and Associates. That was recorded at Martin Cohen's home studio, also known as Conga Head. And the thing with Pete Nader and Associates is Pete Nader and Associates is a spin-off of gigs that I started doing with Oscar Hernandez and Herman Olivera and Ralph Irizarry. Oscar used to get these gigs, private gigs, and little small clubs, just fill-in gigs, some of which paid well because they were private. And then Oscar's always had a knack for getting good gigs. So we would play head tunes. We never rehearsed. We just discuss, hey, do you know this song? And yeah, I know it. Or if you didn't know it, well, we're going to play it anyway, and you can learn it. So we did a lot of gigs playing head tunes, never rehearsed. but because everybody in the band was like really good, Ray Martinez on bass most of the time, Ralph Irizarry on timbales. Congueros were very, it could have been Eddie Montalvo, um, Herman Olivera, as I mentioned, sometimes Frankie Vasquez. Then Oscar moved to California, and Ralph Irizarry started getting the gigs. So, except for on piano, it was pretty much the same guys. So we got tight. There was a time when we were playing every Thursday at a place in New York called Gonzales and Gonzales. And we started to develop a routine playing those head tunes. If anybody doesn't know what a head tune is, it's a song that, it's like a standard that everybody knows. So you don't have to rehearse, you know it, okay, what key we're going to play it in. We decide on what key we're going to play it in and just play those songs. And the more we play them, we start to develop like little routines, different breaks, different moñas, coros, we most of the guys are what they call guataqueros. Are you familiar with the term guataquero?
I wouldn't know I wouldn't know how to define it, but yes, I do know. I do know what it means. Those guys they feel it, they know how to do it. They're from the street. They can play everything, adapt.
Right. So that's basically it. So for those of you who don't know, it's a musician who has the ability who knows a lot of the classic tunes, who has the ability to jump in and follow along, add to it, without necessarily looking at music at all. Change the coros. It's good to have a singer that is a sonero, that is somebody who can improvise and talk about whatever the new coro is or what's happening in front of them, which is it's a whole serious skill that majority of singers don't have. We could talk about that for hours too. But anyway, most of these guys are guataqueros. You tell them the name of a tune. Yeah, I played that before. The same thing happens in the jazz genre and R&B, the wedding kind of bands. You know the tunes. You can play along. So the same thing in salsa. But these guys are like the creme de la creme in guataqueros. So again, we never rehearsed. We didn't look at charts. It might have yelled out, okay, F minor, E flat, kind of thing, in case somebody was unsure. So that's what we did. Oscar Hernandez, it went into Ralph Irizarry's lap when Oscar moved to Florida. We got really tight playing at Gonzales every week. And then people started, hey, Pete, do you have a band? And I was like, well, I used to have Fascinacion, but I don't have a band right now. Then there was this place, I got stories, a place in New York City called the FB Lounge, which we would have small groups play there. They had live music 3 or 4 nights a week, and they would designate somebody different to direct the band, to do Huataca. And I was doing it pretty often. So somebody, since I was working with lawyers, my day job was, I was an investigator, paralegal investigator with the City of New York Law Department. Somebody one day said, "Are you still there?" Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back. So somebody, because I was working in the legal field, said, "Hey, call the band Pete Nader and Associates," like a law firm. So that name kind of stuck. So again, Oscar Hernandez, Ralph Irizarry, people asking me, "Hey Pete, do you have a band?" I said, "No, but if you got a gig, I can put a band together." And I just call it Guataqueros. And I started getting a few gigs as Pete Nader and Associates. We never recorded, we never rehearsed. I just knew the right guys that were Guataqueros, and no matter what I called, they can follow along. And that's that's basically what I do. Once in a while, I don't actively go out looking for gigs. I mean, if they come up, because thank God I do freelance a lot. There's a lot of different bands that call me. So you know, I hate to say it like this, but I'm not in a desperate situation that I need to look for gigs. So if something falls my way, great. I know the guys to call. I mean, there's a few of them. I know a few bass players, a few piano players that can do the guataca kind of job. So that's Pete Nader and Associates, which you saw with Frankie Vasquez. He's done a bunch of gigs with me. Jorge Maldonado, the great vocalist, also has done gigs with me. Jeremy Bosch, Ray Bayona on vocals. These are different vocalists that I've called to do gigs with me, and it's been Pete Nader and Associates. So if you need a band,
we know who to call.
Pete Nader and Associates.
Yes, and call your friends and see who shows up. Well, let's Earl had asked you about this earlier, and Earl, I'm going to let you go into this, talking about his page that you have visited. So if you want to ask him, do you remember what you asked him?
Oh yeah, I did ask him. Oh yeah, I asked him. It seemed like he had a lot of activity on there, and I wanted to know, was it because he's just Pete Nader, or is it because a lot of people like the information on his page?
Okay, so you know what, Earl, when you first asked me that question, I wasn't sure if you were referring to my Facebook pages, or are you referring to Salsa Legends and Masters Academy, aka Slaminator.com?
Actually, I'm talking about both.
Okay, so let me start with Slaminator.com. Slaminator, Slamaner, Slama, Salsa Legends and Masters Academy, and then Nader, my last name. How I came up with that name, I don't know. I was trying to think. I wanted to do the Salsa Legends and Masters Academy, but that's so long. I said, let me do Slama and my last name. It just sounds interesting. So that is something that I created because I wanted to give back. I've been very blessed to play with a lot of great bands, a lot of great musicians, legends, masters of this music that we call salsa. I've traveled all over the world. I've been so blessed that I wanted to give back. I wanted to create a place where I can, so people can go to learn about the legends, the masters, the history of the music, legendary bands. So I decided to create a website because I was kind of learning about technology and online marketing and that kind of stuff when I was learning about real estate. So I actually hired a virtual employee. A virtual employee, meaning the guy lived in Bangladesh. And at the time there was a website, trying to remember what it was called, but you could hire people from different countries to do stuff for you like they're an assistant, but a lot less expensive. So back then, I'm talking about, this must have been about 14 years ago that I decided to do this. I was able to hire a guy, and let me make this clear, because when you hear what I was paying them, they say, damn, Pete. But at the time, the minimum wage in Bangladesh was 50 cents per hour.
Right.
50 cents per hour. And I was paying this guy $3.50 per hour. So I was paying him good. He was happy. He was well paid. And what I did was I would create these videos that instructed him what to do. Screen capture software is something where I can, whatever I'm doing on the computer, you could see that, plus you could hear my voice. So I created these training videos for him on how to research. I gave him examples like Tito Puente. I would go online and I would Google Tito Puente and I would find like a biography. And then there's another website where I would look up his discography, all the recordings that he did over the years. So I would teach him how to create a page with the biography, discography, and then go to YouTube and look up some videos and put that into the page. So I had him create probably 250 pages for different legendary people and bands, and I would also interview some of my colleagues, some of them legends. I mean, I interviewed people like Eddie Palmieri, Larry Harlow, the late Sal Cuevas, Herman Olivera, Tito Nieves, Ricardo Rey and Bobby Cruz, Johnny Rodriguez, Louis Kahn. I mean, the list goes on and on. Eddie Torres, when it comes to dancers, too. I've interviewed some dancers. Also, I would travel around and, even on my own, go to places like Russia and Paris and look for salsa clubs. So, Ukraine, I go out, I might have some friends that say, hey, where's a place that I could check out? I go with my camera, my phone, and make videos. Sometimes I'll jam with the bands there because I love doing that. I love playing. I've been very fortunate to go all over the world and have so much fun playing with bands. So I decided to create this website where people can learn about the history, the legends. I interview people. I'd go around seeking salsa places and jam, and that's one of the reasons why I have the followers, Earl.
Mm-hmm.
So Slaminator.com, and then I created Facebook came along. See, back then when I started, I think it was still what's the name of that old
MySpace?
MySpace. Yeah. Yeah, and then Facebook started to become big, so I had my first Pete Nader page, and then next thing I knew, I had like 5,000, and that was a limit. So then I decided to create a band page, also known as a fan page. That's Pete Nader Music, but I also wanted to have, regular pages, so the Pete Nader page 2, and that got filled up in Pete Nader page 3, and then within Facebook, I created a group. Pete Nader Salsa Legends and Masters Academy group within Facebook. So between all that combination, then I try to post. Mostly I do Pete Nader music, and then I'll share it on those other various pages. But I try to keep sharing whatever on all the various pages. Right. Oh, there's also a YouTube Salsa Legends and Masters Academy YouTube channel. There's a Pete Nader. No, it's Fascinator. Fascinator is my email address. It's a combination of Fascinacion and my last name.
Uh-huh.
So there's a Fascinator YouTube page too. But I have to confess that for the last 6 years or so that I retired, that I wasn't making the steady income of my day job, I had to let go of my virtual employee, and I haven't been keeping up my Slaminator.com. Sorry guys, but I did retire and want a full-time job, and staying on top of that could be a full-time job. And I was able to reach the level I did with it was because I had a virtual employee who would help me with my real estate investing business and Slaminator.com. So I was able to designate a lot of those chores that would have taken a long time, but I was able to afford a virtual employee back then. Right now, not so much. I mean, I'm doing okay. Thank God. I got my pension. I got some real estate that I invested in, and I'm going to start collecting Social Security. Yeah. So I'm doing okay. Thank God.
Well, it just so happens, not because you're on this show, but Eileen knows this is the true story for me. My top 3 favorite bands are Spanish Harlem Orchestra, the Mambo Legends, and the Latin Jazz.
Wow.
Those
How
are
about
my
that?
first. Those are my three. My favorite is the Mambo Legends. I love big band mambo. It's like it just drives me crazy when I hear it. Eileen can tell you, it's like I have an out of body experience.
I hear you. Like I said, it makes my head stand,
Yeah.
to play with those bands. And wow, I didn't know that. It just so happens that I'm a member of, well, I'm not with Spanish Harlem anymore, but
Yeah.
But
I
you
was with
were.
them for a
You
good
were.
10, 11 years, and I was on one of their Grammy-winning recordings.
Yeah.
And if anybody else is interested, I'm also on a Grammy-winning recording with the Chico O'Farrell Afro-Cuban Jazz
Oh,
wow.
Orchestra. He was already deceased, but his son continued the band, and we used to play at a famous club in New York City called Birdland every Sunday night.
wow.
And I was in that band for a couple of years. But when his son Arturo decided he was going to stop playing his dad's music, we did do one last gig at Birdland, which was recorded live. And that particular recording turned out to be a Grammy winner. So that's
Wow.
the other Grammy award-winning recording that I'm a member of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like in awe here talking to you, Mr. Nader. I mean, I really, really do love big band. I really, really do.
I hear you. I'm glad you do.
Now,
I love it too.
I want to ask you this before I turn it back over to Eileen. I mean, you've been with some slamming, jamming, swinging bands. You have the ability to play that music that just makes people go crazy. I asked this of all the artists that come on, do you dance mambo?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can't believe what my answer to this question is. I don't dance. I'm not a dancer. I do know the basic steps.
Okay.
I've taken a couple of lessons over the years, but never enough and consistently that I've learned all those busy turns and stuff. Yeah, I'm kind of ashamed of it, but early on I was kind of shy. Also, sometimes the clubs are really loud, and when we're done playing, a lot of musicians, we just go outside and hang out outside. So again, I know the basic step. I do have rhythm. Okay, there. It's just that all those intricate turns. No. I mean, and another thing, I don't know, Earl, how fluent you are in Spanish, pero a mí me dicen que soy lo que hago es aguaje. I kind of make believe I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of good dancers, so I know some of the little things they do. So you might think I know how to dance, but no, I can't do all those fancy turns.
All right.
Rhythm is where it is.
But some of the bands that I play with, we do these little dance routines on stage. It's just part of the performance, and that makes it a lot more fun. I wish there were more of that these days, but there isn't. But Grupo Fascinacion, there was a time where we had some really nice dance steps in the brass section.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
And in some of these bands, a lot of the guys are older too. It's not like it's not like we're Perfume, the Japanese band. You guys familiar with Perfume at all? It's a J-pop band. The girls dance really good. They're amazing. Perfume. Not that I'm into pop, but these girls are amazing.
You keep up.
Yeah.
I mean, did we play Funny?
No, we did not.
I hope this is the right one. Lord,
I thought that was.
Let's see.
Funny, baby, funny, 'cause I can't stop loving you. I could listen to your name, and it doesn't start to play. Funny, baby, funny, 'cause I can't stop loving you. Oh, why Jimmy Lily cry all night? Without your loving, I can't survive. Funny, baby, funny, 'cause I can't stop loving you. I can't stop loving you.
I had to stop. But I would just got up and started doing.
Yeah. I love that band. I wish we played more often. But with a band that big, it's an expensive band to hire.
Yeah.
So sadly, we don't play that often. But whenever I do, it's among my favorite bands, Earl. I can't say it's my favorite, but it is among my favorite bands because
incredible. My goal is to have the Mambo Legends on the move for the concert. That's my goal.
On the move? What do you mean?
On the moon.
En la luna.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. Real quickly before I forget, I don't know where we are in the show, but I just want to mention, and some of the people watching may know that I've been playing a lot lately with Johnny Rodriguez and his Dream Team. That's also an all-star band. Although we do have some charts, a lot of it is Guataca, tunes we all know, and we make it our own. We change the coros around. We change the moñas and the mambos around. Do you guys know what a moña is?
My favorite part of the song.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Johnny Rodriguez.
Explain it for our listeners.
Okay, I'll try to explain it as quickly as possible. The moña usually happens later on in the song. So generally there's the guia, which is the melody of the song. And then the next section, there might be an interlude going from the guia into the next section, which is the montuno. The montuno is generally that part of the song where the chorus comes in, and the singer, and they go back and forth, call and response. That's the montuno. Then the next section, where if it's a band with brass, the next section where they come in, that part of the song is called the mambo, where the piano and bass might do something, then the brass answers. Piano and bass might repeat it again, then the brass answers. Then it goes back to either the first montuno or the second montuno, which might be a new coro and singer, coro singer. And then generally after that, there's another section where the brass comes in. But what the piano and bass are doing might not change. It's just something, an adornment that brass is adding to the song while the singers take a break. So that part of the song is called the moña. Okay. That's a brief, not thorough explanation of what a moña is, because there could be more to a moña, but basically that's what the moña is.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you, but okay. I can't see you.
Yeah, it said my camera disconnected. I don't know what to do about it. But anyway, for me, the best way to explain the moña is the most exciting part of the song, because it's like just going in a upward spiral with the energy. And then when it's over, you find yourself back on earth.
So, here's the interesting thing about moñas and guataqueros. A lot of times you just spontaneously make it up. It's not written. I mean, there might be moñas that are written, but guataqueros, I'll give you a great example. Jimmy Bosch is great at making up moñas. I mean, the song is feeling good, and he'll just make up something that's a moña. And then we listen to what he's playing, and we make up something that hopefully fits with that. But, you have to know about clave in order to be a good inventor of moñas and guataquero. I mean, clave, is 2/3 clave and 3/2 clave. If you're playing something that's against the clave, the people that know are going to look at you like, you need to do your homework. You need to go home and, watch the traditional bands and get an understanding of what the clave is, because when you're cruzado, which means you're playing the wrong clave, it's painful to those musicians who know what's right,
Well,
so Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, finish, and then I'll ask the question.
So yeah, the moña again. It could be written. It could be something that the arranger took time out to actually write that he wants played every time the song is played, or it can be improvised. Sometimes the best moñas are improvised, and again, depending on who it is making it up. Doug Beavers is very good at that now too. He's relatively new compared to some of us, but he's done his homework and he's learned what sounds good and what doesn't. So there's another trumpet player that he and I play very well together, Richie Virouette. We're pretty good at making up moñas, just bringing the song to the next level. And like Eileen said, it could like take the band to the moon, and then you come back down to earth for a while. Yeah. But that's one of my most favorite parts of playing spontaneously are making up moñas. And sometimes you got a brass solo on top of a moña, which is like another level, which is a lot of fun.
So Pete, you had did you have a gig earlier today?
I did. I played with Stephen Oquendo's Latin Jazz Orchestra. There was an event in the Bronx in front of the Bronx Supreme Courthouse. And there were some politicians there that wanted to say their piece. Andrew Yang, who's running for mayor, among others. Mm-hmm. They said their thing, and we played. And then Papo Vasquez band, Pirates and Troubadours, also played after we did. Yeah, I was out in the hot sun for like 3 hours, and that's why I look tired, because I am tired.
Have you by any chance seen the movie In the Heights?
I loved it. I was so proud. It's a family movie. You could take the kids. The singing is kick-ass. The music is kick-ass. The storyline is a nice story. I was really, really impressed. I was proud to see so many Latino names in the credits. Lin-Manuel Miranda, as they say, te botaste. You did a great job. In my opinion, it's as good as any musical from back in the day. I'm talking about, Bing Crosby, whatever. Those kind of classic, big budget musicals. Yeah. In the Heights is just as good. I mean, you got these dance scenes, and it's so nice to see people dancing salsa on the big screen.
Yes.
On beat, and the band is kicking ass, and the singers are, in tune, and it was amazing. Oh, so if you haven't seen it, go see In the Heights. I hope you agree, Earl. Did you see it?
I did. I agree. I agree pretty much with everything that you said. Yeah. It was. I was proud to say I knew some of the people that participated in the movie.
Me too. Yeah.
And some people were complaining about a couple of things. I don't even want to go into it. So.
Yeah, I think I know one of those things.
It needs to be discussed. I get that, but what I don't get is, salsa's always going to be here, but we need a little shot in the arm right now, and I think this movie is giving us that. And
definitely,
the last thing that I would be focused on is something that you really don't have any control over, but I would be happy that we're getting this shot in the arm with salsa. Everybody wants to go out and salsa after they see that movie,
Yeah.
Well, what can I say?
It was quality all the way around, and like I said, it made me proud to be a Latino, and that this was happening at this day and age. It's long overdue, and it doesn't matter if you're Puerto Rican or you're Cuban or you're Dominican or you're from Central or South America. All the flags were represented, and it was like unified. Be proud of what you are, and the featured music for the most part happened to be salsa.
Yeah.
But it's like a universal language. The rhythm was awesome. Go check it out. In the Heights.
Well, because it was so well received, this opens the doors for others to do something similar, because we always have to prove, even though Latinos are the highest percentage of ticket buyers for cinema, they very rarely make movies that are geared toward our sensibilities. So with the success of this and the acclaim that is coming from this, I dare say that we will have, I don't want to say a totally open door, but we're getting our foot in the door so we can make others, I don't want to say like it, but that have a Latin flavor and a Latin sensibility.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like I said, thank God for Lin-Manuel Miranda. You know,
Oh my God, yes.
Before Hamilton, I had seen In the Heights off Broadway, and I thoroughly loved it. And the fact that Hamilton was such a huge hit that it took him to another level of worldwide recognition, which he didn't have before. That enabled him to make this big budget, high quality movie that hopefully, will even be bigger than Hamilton. And like you said, open up doors so that this can happen more often. Quality stuff geared to Latinos, or even if it's geared to the general the general public, they will see Latinos represented in a better way than they often are, where you're either a drug dealer or some kind of hoodlum,
or a maid, or a prostitute,
or a maid, or a gardener,
gardener, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yes. I just want to ask you one more question. I ask this of everyone. Is there anyone that you have not played with that you are dying to play with?
I wish I would have played with the Funny All-Stars. I never got to play with the Funny All-Stars. I did. I mentioned the group Seguida before. We actually were the opening act of one of the Fania All-Star concerts at Yankee Stadium back in '73 with opening act. That's the one that had Manu Dibango and Mongo Santa Maria, Gran Combo at that concert, that the people stormed the field and they had to stop the concert early. Yeah. We were the opening act. And I was like about to play with the Fania All-Stars, and then I forgot who it was. Somebody told me they were going to get me in. I don't know if it was Pacheco. But then all of a sudden, the gig started getting canceled because some of the guys started getting sick. So I almost got to play with the Funny All-Stars. But in the salsa field, I've jammed with groups that most people don't get a chance to jam with. I've jammed with Gran Combo. I've jammed with Sonora Ponceña. I jammed with Willie Rosario's band. So I played with pretty much everybody that I would have liked to. Okay. Almost. And there might be two or three, but I can't think of them right now.
Okay.
But I've been very blessed, and sometimes I've actually started crying because I'm so grateful of the opportunities and to be in places on the planet that, this kid from the South Bronx is fortunate to get a chance to be there. So
who would have ever dreamed it, right?
I thank God all the time.
Yes. Earl, I'm going to let you take us out.
Okay. Pete, it was an honor and a privilege for you to take time out of your hectic schedule. You had a gig early today. I know you wanted to just come home and get in the bed and relax for a minute.
I almost forgot. I almost took a nap, and I said, I can't. I have this interview. So it's been an honor for me and a pleasure, and I thank you for making the decision to interview me, and hopefully nobody fell asleep during this interview. But it was a lot of fun.
So much. We learned so much.
So much.
Yeah. My pleasure. Yeah. My pleasure.
It was so awesome to have you guys. Have you on the show, sir. And like I said, I thank you so much. I want to thank God for Eileen for bringing you on the show and bringing all the great legends and legends to be on the show. It makes it very interesting. And I'm very self-centered. Reason why I keep doing this is because I'm enjoying myself and I'm learning so much. I'm having fun. I didn't say much. I don't say too much on the interviews, but I'm having a ball just being in the presence of the guys and ladies that are coming on the show. So I want to thank you sincerely and hope maybe I'll get a chance to talk to you again, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure. Once again, thank you for having me. And again, I'd like to say hello to all my friends and supporters out there. Para la gente que habla en español, lo siento que esto no se hizo en español, pero por favor entiendan que nosotros somos nacidos y criados aquí en los Estados Unidos, y porque vivimos en los Estados Unidos, pues principalmente nuestro lenguaje es el inglés, así que yo personalmente me siento más cómodo hablando inglés, pero si tengo que hablar en español, pues sí, lo intento, me defiendo, pero esta vez no tocó en español. Earl, I'm just explaining to people that, fortunately it was in English, but we were born and raised here, and that's our native language. And, we try to do our best.
Before we go, let's make the appeal that anybody that's out there that knows of any footage of Grupo Fascinacion.
That's right. Yes, please, because there's like such hardly any live a video of Grupo Fascinacion live. So if anybody in their closet buried somewhere has footage of Grupo Fascinacion, please upload it somewhere, share it with me, or send me a message and mail it to me. If you don't want to go through the hassle of digitizing it, I'll do it. But I would love to see more live Grupo Fascinacion, and that would be early 80s till at any point. Thank you.
You're right. Okay, Mr. Nader. Again, we're going to let you go now. Thank you. On behalf of Eileen Torres and myself, Earl Rush, we're going to wrap it up now. We want to thank Mr. Pete Nader for coming on the show.
My pleasure. And thanks for having me.
Next week, we will have DJ Broadway will be our special guest. So tune in next week. Also, if you came in late and you want to see the whole episode of this episode and past and future ones, you can just log on to our Facebook page, Straight Up Talk with Earl Rush, and you can see the interview in archives. Okay.
You talking about Mike Midjan's DJ Broadway?
Yes.
Mike did the sound for Grupo Fascinacion a bunch of times at Club Broadway. He might have audio recordings. I don't know. Mike, you got anything? But it wouldn't be video.
We'll ask him.
Ask him.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right. See you later, Pete. All right, Eileen. Talk to you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.